I used to believe the earth could hear us. Every strike of the pickaxe, every footstep echoing in that endless tunnel. It all sounded like prayer to me. A slow rhythm, metal on stone, breath on dust. We didn't talk much underground. Words didn't last long in the air. They got swallowed by the weight of everything above us. My name is Sipho Dlamini, and I was born in the dark. Not by accident, by inheritance. My father mined these same walls when they still said our skin was too black for the surface. He'd come home covered in gray dust, coughing up pieces of the mountain. I used to wipe his boots clean before he went to bed, wondering what stories hid inside the mud. He died when I was 10, a cave-in. They said it was quick, but my mother told me he was still singing when the rock fell. She said that's how the ancestors recognize you, by your voice. That's why I never shouted in the mine. I was afraid they'd answer. I joined the company at 17, following the same tunnel, the same pay, the same promise that one day things would be better. But the mines don't care about promises. They care about hands, strong ones, ones that don't tremble when the alarms ring or when the roof moans like thunder. 14 hours a day we worked with headlamps that flickered like dying stars. Sometimes we joked that if you could see your shadow, it meant you were still alive. Other times, we didn't joke at all. The white helmets, supervisors, walked past us with clipboards and clean boots. We nodded. They never nodded back. That's just how it was. The mine was a world divided not by color anymore, but by altitude. Some people lived above ground. The rest of us lived below it. Still, I kept faith. I prayed before every shift. To God, yes, but mostly to the ones who came before. My father, his father, all the men whose bones fed the soil. I believed they watched us from inside the diamonds. Every sparkle was a heartbeat, every glint a memory. Sometimes, when the light hit just right, I swore I saw eyes staring back. Not ghosts, just reminders. I wasn't an ambitious man. I didn't dream of mansions or cars. I wanted a new roof, school books for my children. Maybe shoes that didn't split after 3 months. Simple things, but down there, even simplicity costs blood. They say temptation doesn't knock, it whispers. For me, it came the night I found the stone. We were clearing debris near Shaft 9, the air thick with ammonia and diesel. My pick hit something hard. It wasn't just quartz or waste rock. It shone even before I wiped the dust away. Blue fire, cold and deep. My breath stopped. The foreman shouted for us to move on, but I kept staring. My fingers trembled when I touched it. Smooth, heavy, alive. A diamond. Bigger than any I'd ever seen. I looked around. No one saw. I slipped it into my glove. Told myself it was only for a moment. Just to feel what my father never could. Just to see if it really breathed. But it pulsed. Faint, like a heart trapped inside stone. That's when I heard it. A whisper close to my ear. I can't say what language it spoke. Maybe it was memory, maybe guilt. All I know is that it said my name. once. And from that night, I wasn't just digging rock anymore. I was digging the past. The first night after I found the diamond, I couldn't sleep. It lay hidden in a rag inside my toolbox, between the wrench and the dull pickaxe I kept for luck. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it glowing behind my eyelids, as if the earth had followed me home. My wife, Nomvula, asked what was wrong. I told her it was just the dust. The truth was heavier than the stone itself. At dawn, I took it out and held it against the window. The light cut through it like smoke through water. No flaw, no mark, just a piece of eternity, small enough to fit in my hand. That morning, when I went back to the mine, I carried it in my pocket. It burned there, quiet and warm, as if the ancestors themselves were walking with me.
I kept hearing my father's voice.
We died for the earth to live. Take what it gives you, my son, but never forget to say thank you. So that night I whispered, Giabonga, Baba. Thank you, Father. They say one lie gives birth to 10 more. The same is true for diamonds. One stone leads to another, and soon you start believing the earth owes you something. When I sold the first one, I did it for the right reason. At least that's what I told myself. The black market man worked out of a back room behind a liquor store on Chapel Street. He didn't ask questions. He just weighed the stone, looked at me once, and said, "You sure you want to let this go?" I said, "It's not mine. It's for my father." He smiled, the kind of smile that knows a lie when it hears one. Still, he paid me cash, more than I had ever held in my life. That night, Nomvula cried when I fixed the leaking roof, not because it stopped raining, but because it was the first time she'd seen me smile without pretending. I told her we got a bonus. She didn't believe me, but she didn't ask. Sometimes, love is just silence that forgives what it already knows. Weeks passed. I worked harder, dug deeper. I began to recognize the shimmer in the rock like a sixth sense. It was as if the stones called to me now, faintly humming through the metal of the drills. Each time I found one, I whispered a name. My father's, my brother's, the men who'd vanished into the tunnels without graves. This one's for you. It became a ritual. Find, hide, whisper, sell, pray. The more I gave thanks, the more the mine gave back. Or so I thought. I started walking taller, bought better boots, sent my eldest, Tabo, to a private school outside Kimberley. When the neighbors asked, I said I got promoted to foreman. They congratulated me, and I smiled, because the lie felt like justice. But justice, when you buy it, always asks for interest. Sometimes, during shifts, I'd feel the walls vibrate around me, soft, like breathing. The air would grow cold, even when the compressors were on full. "Can you hear that?" I'd ask the men. They'd shake their heads. It was never loud, just whispers, like many voices speaking at once, too close to the skin. I told myself it was fatigue, but when I pressed my ear to the rock, I could swear they were calling my name again. My brother Cabello worked beside me in Shaft 12. Younger, stronger, always laughing. He teased me for talking to stones. "Careful, Booty," he said. "The dead don't whisper, they listen." We laughed, but I caught the flicker in his eyes. Fear disguised as humor. That night, after we clocked out, he asked me straight, "You're hiding something, aren't you?" I wanted to tell him everything, but I saw our mother's photograph hanging on the wall at home. Her eyes faded from years of dust. I couldn't bring shame to her face, so I said, "Just tired, Cabello, that's all." He nodded, but didn't believe me. The third stone came 2 months later, bigger, flawless. I didn't even hesitate this time. Sold it the same night. Used the money to buy a new generator. Paid for my youngest daughter's medicine. Each transaction felt like redemption. Each coin sounded like a hymn. But one morning, as I polished the smallest gem under the lamp, I saw something. A reflection. Not my own face, Cabello's. For a second, he was looking right at me, mouth open, like trying to speak. I blinked, and he was gone. My hands shook so badly that I dropped the stone. It rolled under the table, still shining, still alive. That night, I didn't sleep again. The whispering returned, louder this time, crawling through the walls like wind. Debt, they said. Debt must be paid. I pressed my palms to my ears, but it came from inside. I told myself it was guilt, but guilt doesn't breathe. 2 weeks later, the collapse came. We were working deep, too deep. The foreman wanted to clear a section faster before inspection. The ground was wet, the supports weak. Cabello was the first to notice the sound, a low groan, like the world exhaling. "Run!" he shouted. The roof caved before I could turn. Dust swallowed everything, light, breath, time. I remember coughing, crawling, the smell of diesel and blood. 9 men never came out. Cabello was one of them. When they pulled me from the rubble, I was still holding a diamond in my fist. I didn't remember picking it up. They said it was a miracle I survived. I said nothing, because the voices were right. The earth had taken back what I'd stolen. I never went back to the mine after the collapse. They said the shafts were sealed, that the ground was unstable. But I didn't need to go back. The sound of the cave-in never left me. It followed me home, humming inside the silence. The company paid me a small pension, called it compensation. I took it without looking at the papers. Money for my brother's body. Money for the 9 names printed on the report. I folded it into a drawer and never touched it again. Then one day, I opened a workshop, a diamond polishing shop. They said it was strange, a miner working with light instead of earth. But I couldn't let it go. I told myself I was honoring the dead, turning what killed them into something beautiful. That's what I said out loud. Inside, I just wanted to keep hearing them. The shop was small, half the size of our kitchen. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, buzzing like an insect trapped between worlds. I'd sit there for hours, turning the stones under the wheel, watching them breathe. Yes, breathe. When you polish a diamond, it exhales. The dust dances in the air like smoke from a prayer. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it whisper. Not words, but a kind of sigh. I started talking to them, quietly, like a man at confession. "Forgive me," I'd say, pressing the gem against my forehead. "Forgive me for not running faster. Forgive me for selling your bones." Each diamond had a voice of its own. The clearer the stone, the colder the sound. Some nights they sang together, a low harmony that shook the walls. Namvula said I should rest, but I couldn't. I wasn't working anymore. I was listening. Business grew. Tourists came. Some said my cuts were different, deeper, more alive. They'd ask where I learned, and I'd tell them, from the ground. They thought it was poetry. I never corrected them. At first I felt proud. The money returned, the children studied, the roof stopped leaking for good. People in the township began calling me the Diamond Man. I smiled when they said it, though every time the word diamond felt heavier than my name. Then one evening a storm hit. The power died mid-polish, and the wheel stopped spinning. I sat there in the dark, the half-cut stone glowing faintly in my hand, and I heard them again. This time, not whispers. Voices, many, layered like echoes in a cathedral. Cabello, Baba, the others. They weren't angry, not at first. They sounded tired. "Why do you keep us alive?" one of them said. "Because I can't let you go," I answered aloud. Silence. Then, "You're polishing our graves." The bulb flickered back on. I dropped the stone. It rolled to the floor, leaving a thin cut on my finger. I watched the blood slide down, dark and shining. For a second, it looked exactly like the diamond's reflection. After that night, I couldn't stop. Every morning I returned to the bench. Every night I stayed longer. Sleep became impossible. I dream of the shafts collapsing again, only this time, when I reached out for Cabello, his body turned to dust, and inside the dust were diamonds, hundreds of them, breathing in unison. I woke up sweating, whispering apologies to the ceiling. Nomvula started sleeping in the children's room. She said I scared her. I told her I was fine, that I just needed to finish one last order. She didn't believe me, but she didn't argue. The next day I covered the windows with cloth. Too much sunlight made the stones look human. Soon the shop became a shrine, not for customers, for the dead. I placed each finished diamond in a small glass case labeled with a name: Sipho Dlamini, Cabello, Tabo's friend, Mandla. Even the ones I couldn't remember, I gave them numbers, whispered them prayers. Sometimes people came to buy. I refused to sell. They didn't understand. These weren't jewels anymore. They were graves I could touch. But the world outside doesn't care for your ghosts. One afternoon, a merchant from Johannesburg arrived. Tall, clean suit, gold watch glinting. He offered me triple the market price for the lot. Each of these, he said, running his fingers along the cases, could feed your family for a year. I told him they already had. He smiled, thinking I was joking. Then he looked at my hands, cracked, trembling, black with carbon. He saw the altar behind me, the candles burning low, the photos of the miners taped to the wall. He didn't speak again. After he left, I sat alone in the dim light. 9 cases, 9 souls. I opened one, Cabello's. The diamond shimmered faintly, catching the flame. I saw his face again, clearer this time. His eyes were calm. "I only wanted to help," I whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't need to, because I finally understood. I hadn't stolen from the company. I'd stolen from them. Every stone I sold was another piece of what the earth had taken to rest, and every rand I earned was a prayer unreturned. The whispers grew softer now, not accusing, but distant, fading. Maybe forgiveness, maybe silence. That night, I dreamed of the mine again, only this time it was empty. No noise, no dust, just light, endless, white, clean. The diamonds were gone. The ground was smooth, breathing quietly. And when I looked down at my hands, they were dust too. The days lost their shape. Sometimes I worked until dawn without noticing. Other times I sat for hours without touching a tool. The bulb above the table hummed, and the air smelled like burnt metal and sweat. There was no difference between the sound of the polishing wheel and the sound inside my head. I told myself I was keeping the voices calm, that if I polished long enough, they'd find peace. But peace is a word for people who can still tell day from night. Namvula stopped coming to the shop. She left food by the door, quietly, as if feeding a ghost she no longer recognized. The children stopped visiting. I heard them laugh outside sometimes, sharp, distant, alive. I wanted to go out, to join them, but every time I reached the door, I heard the stones whisper, "Stay." So I stayed. One evening, the power failed again. The wheel stopped mid-spin, and the silence hit like an explosion. I struck a match, the small flame trembling as if afraid to breathe. The room flickered, diamonds everywhere, glowing like 1,000 tiny eyes. For a moment, I couldn't move. It felt like standing inside a constellation of souls. Then the whispers began. Louder now, overlapping, crying, singing. "Debt," they said. "Debt must be paid." I dropped the match. The light died, but their glow didn't fade. The stones pulsed, each one exhaling a pale shimmer. I covered my ears, but the voices came from within. "You took what was buried. You turned rest into hunger. You owe the dark." I stumbled back, hit the table, fell to the floor. The cases shook. One by one, the diamonds slid off the shelves, landing beside me, soft, deliberate. When I opened my eyes, the entire floor was covered in light, breathing, waiting. And then I saw him, Cabello, standing by the door, covered in dust, the same torn overalls, the same tired smile. "You still here, Booty?" he asked. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. "I can't leave," I managed. He crouched, picked up one of the diamonds, turned it in his hand. The reflection of the candlelight ran across his face like water. "This isn't for us," he said. "It was never for us." Then the light folded inward. His body faded into the glow, and when I blinked, he was gone. Only the diamonds remained, cold and still. I don't know how long I stayed there. The next thing I remember is the smell of smoke. A short circuit, maybe. Or maybe something older, something owed. The cloth over the windows caught first, then the shelves. The cases cracked under the heat, the stones turning black in the fire. I didn't move. I just watched. Each one hissed as it burned, like sighs escaping. And in that sound, I heard something strange. Not sorrow, not pain. Relief. They weren't dying. They were leaving. I reached for the last one, the largest, the one with Cabello's reflection. I held it close, the fire licking my hands. For the first time in years, it was silent. I smiled. Then I dropped it into the flame. The fire brigade said it was an accident, faulty wiring. The neighbors said they saw me kneeling inside, praying to the smoke. I don't remember. Maybe I was. When the fire was out, nothing was left but ash and glass. No diamonds, not a single one. As if the earth had taken them back. They asked if I'd rebuild the shop. I said no, I'd had enough of light. The fire took everything that could burn. What it left behind was the sound. That small, brittle quiet that comes after something dies. They moved us to a rented room on the edge of town. Bare walls, one window, one mattress. Namvula spoke little. She'd lost her smile somewhere in the smoke. I used to sit outside, watching the dust rise when trucks passed. The air smelled of scorched wood and rusted rain. Every sound felt too loud. The world was still working, still moving, while I had stopped. One afternoon, a neighbor brought a bucket of water and said softly, "God gives and takes, Sipho." I nodded, but I didn't believe him. God doesn't take. He waits for us to return what we stole. At night, I still heard whispers, but they were no longer inside my head. They came from memory, a chorus of breath and hammer, of men laughing through fatigue. I missed that sound more than I missed money. Sometimes I thought about going back underground, just to feel the weight again. But the company said the shafts were sealed. They'd built new tunnels elsewhere, deeper, more efficient, more dangerous. Progress, they called it. I started visiting the ruins of my shop. The frame still stood, blackened and hollow. The air smelled of carbon and rain. I'd sweep the ashes into small piles and whisper names over them, my own way of burying the unburied. One morning, I found something in the soot, a shard of glass, curved, translucent, almost like a fragment of diamond. But when I held it to the light, it didn't shine. It just sat there, dull and heavy, as if refusing to be seen. I closed my hand around it. "Enough," I said. "Rest." It crumbled to dust. After that, I began to walk again. Not far, just through the township, past the fields where children played. They'd chase each other barefoot, kicking up sand, laughing like they owned the sky. One of them, a small boy with my brother's eyes, asked me, "Uncle, why are your hands black?" I said, "Because I was digging for light." He laughed, the way Cabello used to, and ran off. For a moment, I forgot what guilt felt like. Namvula eventually started speaking again. Not to me at first, to the pastor, to the neighbors. But one evening, as we sat under the faint orange bulb of our new room, she said, "You keep talking to the dead, Sipho, but they already forgave you. You're the one who hasn't." I looked at her and saw that she was right. All these years I'd mistaken guilt for memory and penance for love. Maybe the real debt wasn't to the ancestors. Maybe it was to the living, the ones who still waited for me to come home. So I went to the church. Not for confession, our church doesn't do that. I just sat there while the choir rehearsed. The same hymn over and over. Siyahamba ekukanyeni kwenkos. We are walking in the light of God. Their voices rose like smoke, and I closed my eyes.
For the first time in years, the darkness inside me didn't answer back. There was no whisper, no breathing stone, no echo of the mine, only the sound of children outside, the rhythm of living feet. I whispered a prayer I hadn't used since my father died. May the earth forgive us. May it let us rest when we are done taking. And in that moment, I heard something new. Not silence, not judgment, just peace. Morning comes slow in Kimberly. The light creeps, not floods, as if even the sun must dig its way out of the earth. I wake before it reaches the window. The house is quiet, smaller somehow, but peaceful. Namvula hums while she folds the laundry. The children's laughter drifts from outside, tangled with the sound of the radio, the smell of maize porridge. I sit on the step, rubbing the lines of my palms, the same hands that once carried diamonds, now scarred and ordinary. I like them better this way. People still whisper when they see me. Some say I went mad. Some say I found God. Maybe both are true. I don't try to explain anymore. I never rebuilt the workshop. Instead, I took a job cleaning tools for the new miners, sharpening drills, checking lamps, sweeping dust. The young men call me Baba Sipho, like I've always been old. They laugh loud, curse louder, dream bigger. Sometimes one of them will bring me a small rock and ask, "Is this a diamond, Baba?" I turn it over in my hand, smile, and say, "Not yet." They think I'm joking. I let them think that. What I mean is, not everything that shines needs to be taken. Some things become precious only when you leave them where they belong. On Sundays, I walk to the old pit. It's fenced now, a tourist spot, the big hole they call it. I stand at the edge, looking down at the water filling the void. It's blue, the same blue I once saw in that first diamond. Deep, endless, unforgiving. I toss a pebble in, listen to the ripples fade. Sometimes, when the wind is still, I imagine I hear the faint hum of machines below, the ghosts of drills and voices blending with the water. But it's not fear anymore. It's memory. And memory, I've learned, is a form of mercy. I keep one thing from the fire, a small, charred box. Inside, only dust. But when I open it, I smell metal, sweat, and rain. That's enough. When I die, I want that box buried with me. Not for wealth, not for proof, just to remind whoever comes after that the earth is patient. It remembers what we take, but it also forgives what we return. The other day, my son Tabo asked me, "Baba, were the diamonds really cursed?" I looked at him and said, "No, my boy, we were. We just thought the light belonged to us." He nodded slowly, as if understanding. Maybe he did. I told him about his uncle Cabello, how brave he was, how the earth kept him safe beneath it. I didn't tell him about the whispers. Some truths don't need to be passed down. When we finished talking, he took my hand, rough against his smooth one, and said, "You did good, Baba." For the first time in years, I believed him. At sunset, I sit outside again. The sky turns the color of rust, red, brown, gold, the same shades as the mine walls. I close my eyes and hear a sound I haven't heard in a long time. Not whispers, not breathing stones, just wind. And in that wind, I feel them. My father, my brother, the 9 who stayed behind. Not haunting, watching. I whisper one last thing, soft enough for only the dust to hear. Some debts can't be paid, but they can be understood. The light fades, the earth exhales, and I, at last, breathe with it.